Raise some
Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.
Welcome to the Raising Cain show. Tonight, we're going to talk about some very important things that need to be talked about free speech. In a world where free speech is under constant attack and truth is filtered through big tech's algorithms, Gary Franchi stands out as a relentless champion for independent journalism. As the founder of the Next News Network, the first conservative-leaning YouTube channel to surpass 1 billion views, Gary has been on the forefront of the fight against censorship and narrative control. Since 2012, his channel has amassed over 2.25 million subscribers and more than 2 billion views, delivering unfiltered news and sharp political commentary to a global audience. Gary's groundbreaking work has been recognized by major outlets like the New York Times, The Guardian, Forbes, The Washington Post. His insightful coverage of national politics, elections, and constitutional issues played a pivotal role in shaping the media landscape during Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. From his early days as a lead news anchor for WHDT World News to producing acclaimed documentaries and managing Republic magazine, Gary has remained committed to transparency and constitutional principles. Now, through his nightly live show, The Raw Feed, broadcast on Elon Musk's X, Rumble, and YouTube, Gary continues to deliver real-time, citizen-driven news, refusing to bow to the censorship industrial complex. Today, Gary joins us to discuss the war on truth, the battle against big tech suppression, and the future of free speech in America. Gary, thank you for joining the show tonight.
Nate, it is an honor to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. You know, I want to start by just saying, at a pivotal time in my life, when it was very hard to get the truth, I used to religiously watch your show, the Next News Network. Number one, because you had one of the few shows that basically played every day, and I could get a lot of great content of what was going on in the world at that time. And you had a real kind of no nonsense, way of delivering the news. And I appreciated that about you. It's been a rough ride for the last decade, really, since a lot of the censorship started. And so I'm really curious to get into it with you and talk to you and find out, how did you survive this? And, what were some of the things that you went on with you in regards to the censorship? And I think it'll be an interesting show tonight. So,
well, Nate, I got to say, it's wild because, I'm just one guy trying to spread some truth, right? I started out as a grassroots activist in the streets with a desire to get the message out by any means necessary. Bullhorn, burn DVDs, passing out magazines. I had an organization called the Lone Lantern Society. Started it in 2006 or something. And we would hit the streets of Chicago, just me and a bunch of guys, and passing out whatever we can and warning people about what's happening with our country. The freedoms that we were losing. And then I met a guy named Aaron Russo who made a film called America, Freedom to Fascism. Mm-hmm. And he's a Hollywood producer. He made a film called America, Freedom to Fascism. Saw that film in a theater in St. Charles, Illinois. He was there, and the entire here we have this Hollywood producer, right? Like, holy cow.
Yeah.
Like, somebody on the inside, right? Part of the elite, and he was actually friends with one of the Rockefellers, Nate Rockefeller, and he had a lot of insight that the Rockefellers told him, and, he in his film Freedom to Fascism, he he brought out the truth about the Federal Reserve System, the taxing system, the IRS, the police state, um, all these different things, executive orders that the president has, to take over the government in times of emergency. That we did see a lot of that happen during the pandemic. So when that film came out, it was really a watershed moment for me because that's my message. I'm a limited government, non-interventionist, pro freedom guy, Constitution, founding fathers, rah rah, red, white, and blue, man. That's me. But now suddenly it's like these are things we need to talk about, but at the same time, I'm suddenly in the center of a censorship war.
Mhm.
And that was never it was never the topic. We weren't ever really talking about censorship. We were talking about issues. And the reality is if you can't talk about issues, you've got nothing to talk about. If they're shutting you down, you're shutting your voice down, those other issues are never going to come to the surface.
Yeah. Without a doubt.
And it's crazy. So, when I met this producer and he sadly he passed away, he had cancer, and he handed me his email lists, and he handed me his websites, and we just poured gasoline on a brush fryer, and we just took it supernova.
Mhm.
Voting candidate Congressman Paul in 2008, 2012, super PAC we ran, and the super PAC, we parlayed a lot of that momentum from that super PAC into the Next News Network because I saw what they did to Congressman Paul during that election in 2012. I saw how the GOP just treated him horribly. I saw what they did to him at the convention when the delegates came out. I saw how the media treated him. I saw the narratives that were being put out about by the media calling him a racist and everything. Oh, Ron Paul's a racist and all this, and back then we had with the super PAC, we had some unique opportunities to present messaging that the campaign wasn't willing to put out.
Mhm.
Campaign is trying to say we're not going to talk about racism. We're not going to even address these claims. We came out and during one of our super PAC members was Ron Paul's chief of staff when he was running for Congress, Penny Freeman, and Penny, recognized these attacks, and she said, "Okay, we're gonna um, we're gonna find this guy." Years ago, Ron Paul delivered a baby for a mixed race couple, and the father went into the hospital, and they weren't going to deliver this. They weren't even going to help the woman, and she was in the emergency room, waiting for she's dying, she's in labor. They weren't even going to help. Ron Paul came in, delivered the baby, stillborn, sadly, and then paid for the funeral. So we pushed back on that narrative, and I said to myself, after this election, I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to stand up for my candidate. I'm going to create a media outlet that's going to do just that, push back against the false narratives, and that's what we did. The early Next News Network was actually a much different than it is today. Like right now, it's really just me, my producer. I've got some representation in Los Angeles and in London that assists with administrative things, but back in the early days, we were collecting voices from all over YouTube. We had a 24-hour stream that was
Yeah.
being put out on our website. And then different things happened over time. APIs changed, and we couldn't keep collecting the information that we did. And then we were on television. We were at WHDT World News after that. So, it had the Next News Network's had a lot of different flavors over the years. And, the only way you can adapt to the change is by adapting to the change. The only way you can
Yeah.
roll the punches is you got to bob and weave. And we've been doing a lot of bob and weaving as of late. So, I
Well,
mean, go
what
ahead.
I distinctly remember about when I was, watching a lot of your stuff on YouTube was I was working at the FBI, was involved in whistleblowing, couldn't tell anybody at the time. In fact, after it came out, you reached out to me, or one of your people reached out to me, tried to get me to come on the show, but at the time I wasn't talking about anything to anyone because I didn't know if I was going to end up in jail or dead or whatever. And so I turned it down, but what impressed me was there was a lot of stories that went on during my time at the FBI, and there was a lot of speculation by a lot of different people, a lot of talk about this and that and everything else, and like the Las Vegas shooting was one of the big things that went down while I was working at the bureau, and I had access to
Wow.
all of the evidence coming in. So I'm reading it, I'm looking at it every day, checking out what's coming in. And one of the things that I really respected about your news organization was that you put out the truth. There was a lot of things being said by a lot of people that sounded, sensationalist or whatever, but there just wasn't. I didn't see any, proof of it on the inside. But you were very careful about, about talking about things that you could back up and providing the news in a newsworthy fashion. And
Yeah.
so that was one of the things that I really respected about, the way that you ran your show back then. And now I saw a lot of changes happen on YouTube, especially as censorship started happening.
Mhm.
And of course, one of the biggest ones was, when they took down InfoWars and Alex Jones
Yeah.
everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
just across the board. I'd never, it was so clearly coordinated with government help. And by the way, he had some people also that clearly were feeding him information from the inside, because there were things I could never talk about. And he
Well,
had the goods on it.
I remember that broadcast that day when I did my show. I wore a black jacket and a black tie.
Hmm.
Like I was going to a funeral. I'll never forget it, man. I'm like, I'm putting this on today because this is a funeral for free speech. I remember that.
Well, I knew if they could do that to him, they could do it to anybody, because he had a huge, huge following.
Yeah.
And I was concerned at that point that we were going to see this happen across the board, and I was right. How did that impact you when all of the censorship stuff started affecting YouTube? I mean, a lot of people
Well,
lost a
okay,
lot of money.
so here's where I first started seeing it. When I was still at WHDT, they were allowing us to co-brand our content, and our channel
Mhm.
was monetized at the time. And I would monitor the analytics all the time, checking the views and everything we would upload. And, because you can track, how much revenue a video is making. And you could see the little chart go up, and all of a sudden it would like drop off and it'd be like zero. I'm like, why is this
Mhm.
happening? And there wasn't now today, they're much more transparent about it. They have a little green dollar sign or a yellow dollar sign or a strike through, right? Well, back then, I'm like, what's going on here? And I had, we had to reach out to YouTube, and it turns out it was, topics that were off limits. And back then, the topics were related to terrorism, ISIS, because ISIS it was using social media back then to do recruiting, make recruiting videos,
Mhm.
and the government was all about preventing those platforms from utilizing those organizations from utilizing those platforms for recruiting. So they would demonetize any content that was related. Um, and then of course, with using the same mechanisms in place, they eventually turned it into talk of election denial or the pandemic.
Yeah.
All those mechanisms were now in place, and they could just change the word. So back then we would just purposely avoid, and I still do it. Like it's just been programmed into me now to never say the word ISIS or never say the word,
Right.
domestic terrorist or Islamic jihad or whatever. I couldn't. It's like I started to learn how to not say things, but say them at the same time.
Right.
So that was like the first indication that I started to see things in the censorship front. But it only got worse from there. I mean, we complained so loud. There were times when I'd have to submit like spreadsheets full of videos to YouTube, and they would manually review each one. And then they came into a different process where they added the $sign, yellow sign, or the strike throughs, manual reviews. You could submit it right from the interface. So then people started realizing, oh my goodness, like all this is happening. But they would never give you like clear answers. They gave you these community guidelines or whatever.
Yeah,
They're always
vague.
vague. Yeah, vague, just vague. So, over time, and I think this is probably just the saddest part of it all is that it has this mental toll on your ability to speak. And, if I'm reading my teleprompter and my producer puts script in there and they didn't check, I mean, we used to have to go through our scripts and we
Mhm.
would have to do keyword searches for, control F, remove, control F, replace content. And if something slipped through, I'd be sitting here reading my prompter and I'd have to change it up in real time as I see the
Right.
words coming. I go, oh, and at the same time, I'm like, I'm a one man show in this studio. Not many people know that. In those times when I would do multi-camera shoots, now I've kind of slimmed it down to just one shot. But I had a hand pad on my left, and I would switch all my shots on my left hand, and I would control my teleprompter with my right foot, and I would read. And so I'm switching, reading, calling my shots, doing all these things. And so as the words are coming, I have to be like super hyper focused on being able to switch these things up. And over time, it like really literally reprograms you.
Yeah.
And it's just trying to break that habit is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
But the keywords over time, as we saw, like for example, um we saw the biggest shift came right after 2016, because we had, during the 2016 election, it was that November, we had 70 million views on the channel. And according to Tubular Labs, we were the number one channel on YouTube with we were over the White House, we were over Hillary, we were over CBS, NBC, we were over the Young Turks, we were higher than Alex Jones. We had more views than anybody. And that's simply because we had a production flow that allowed us to create insane amounts of content in a streamlined fashion.
Mhm.
So we had a lot of food for the algorithm to keep serving people.
And you
So
could
that's why
listen
we
to
were,
it at any time of the day, which I think that
yeah,
was a huge thing. Because for me, when I was driving down or taking the train down to Washington, D.C., I was catching it in the morning, catching it on the afternoon to see if there's anything new. And,
yeah,
that was one of the things about it was, it didn't impact, I didn't have to sit there and be on at just the right time, but I could catch it anytime.
yeah. No, we had such a high quantity of content going out that I think at one point we had like a video dropping like every hour at some point.
Yep.
Um, So, I mean, and then we said, okay, no one's watching in those early hours, so let's just shift the productions and scheduling times. Um, and that all actually happened by accident. My producer Brian and I were, um, it was a live stream. It was a live stream. I was talking to, um, I forget his name now, Patrick Wood from Technocracy. I was talking to Patrick Wood. We were talking about this. The stock market had had a unusual dip that day. Following the live stream, I popped open the Drudge report, popped open a bunch of links and started reading all the articles. After that, my producer Brian goes, "Hey Gary, guess what? I just created 40 videos of you reading each of those articles." I'm like, "What?" So then we scheduled
Back
it
when
out.
Drudge Report was actually worth something.
Yeah. Yeah, when it was worth something.
Yeah.
And so we scheduled out all those videos, and then we just kept refining the process over time. Rather than reading it directly on the screen, we would copy and paste it into the teleprompter, and then we would inject commentaries around it. We'd
Mhm.
show a video, we'd show like a screenshot of the website or whatever. Um, we just kept refining it over time, until it was like super, super, super polished.
Yeah.
And but then because we were so effective during 2016 and Hillary and Obama right after the election. I mean, right after the election, I had Washington Post attacking me, Russian propaganda outlets spreading fake news, right?
Right.
And then like my brother was in DC at the time, and I'm like, "Hey, bro, pick up the Washington Post." He's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because I'm on the front page." you know, and, and so I'll never forget that. Um, but following that, that's when, Hillary and Obama called their buddies over at Google and said, "You guys got to fix this." Well, it took them some time. They eventually figured out what to do, and that's when they switched the algorithm to surface what they call authoritative content.
Mm,
And overnight, November 2017, we lost about 80% of our viewers, and the algorithm switched to stop giving you, like, if you watch my stuff, YouTube knows it, and then it'll keep serving you my content. Well, it stopped doing that. It started serving everyone else Fox News content.
yeah.
So the algorithm switch almost destroyed us. And
Yeah.
and a few months prior to that was the apocalypse of March of 2017. 90% of our revenue dried up overnight then, and then 80% of our viewership dry up in November. I mean, we were almost dead in the water. If I didn't have sponsors, I wouldn't be here today. So
Mm,
that was the first moment that we realized that, there's a real manipulation happening and we've got to figure out what to do.
yeah. Now, the term censorship industrial complex is one that I'm hearing more and more, and I love it because it automatically ties in, with the whole military industrial complex, which was in Eisenhower's speech, but it really has become this like monster, and
Mhm.
what do you think, in your view, who are the key players behind this, and what are their goals?
Well, I think, well, it's a really good question because it's multifaceted.
Hmm.
Mike Benz has done an amazing work deconstructing that very phrase. And it really is an international problem because you have these
Yeah.
groups like GARM that was just brought up recently in the House Weaponization Committee. You saw Ben Shapiro talking about it. GARM isolating conservative websites, striking their telling advertisers stop advertising on these websites. Um, and then of course with the Twitter files, we all had a
Mm,
glimpse of
yeah.
what of the administration of the FBI. I mean, your former
Yep.
colleagues
Yep.
actually like
$9 million.
policing Twitter's terms of service. Like, hey, Jack Dorsey, I think this guy might be violating your terms of service. You might want to check this out, right?
Hmm.
Like, and then why is the FBI policing for Twitter? And they were policing memes
Yeah.
and just mom and pops, who were just sharing their thoughts. That gave us another indication that this was a much bigger problem, you
Yeah.
know. So you have these international groups going up to the World Economic Forum who want to control narratives for their, globalist interests, their fascist corporatist interests from all the people that are in that group. And then that it filters down and they create other groups like GARM, and then it filters down to, the State Department groups and then the college think tanks. And then you have like Media Matters, another group that loves to attack me, that
Yeah.
become their cudgel. So they write an article and it gets spread around, and then YouTube sees a headline and they panic, and then they feel like they need to react to avoid. Oh, we addressed it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So um the censorship, I almost said military, it is almost militant. The
Yeah.
censorship industrial complex has a lot of different tentacles. So the
Well, I want to
scariest
get in.
thing, go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to get into that some more, in particular, some things that I saw that kind of came out of DHS,
Oh,
because I think they were heavily involved. You also saw tentacles in CISA, around
mm,
surrounding election integrity and all of that. But I've got to cut to a commercial break. So, folks, stay with us. We'll be right back after a short message, and we're going to talk about a lot more and dig deep into some of this stuff. So we'll be right back.
It says, I woke up this morning and looked out the door to a country I don't recognize. They put masks on our face to hide our pain, and there's no fire in most people's eyes. And it's still true today. It's still true today that they've tried to destroy the American spirit. And in some instances, they've done a dadgum good job. But in other instances, they have lit an inferno in some people. And we right now are gathering some of those people that are on freaking fire to save this country.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain show. Folks, I'm here with Gary Franchi, and we've been talking about the censorship industrial complex. Before we get back into our discussion, I want to just make a comment about the video that you guys just saw. Veteran and country singer Glenn Baker has put together just an incredible documentary. And I met him, had him on my show, and just incredibly humble guy. And he actually, after we talked and did the show, we were talking, and he had never heard my story, and he immediately called me back like a day or two later and said, "Hey, Nate, I'd like to have you on in my documentary to talk about your story as well." And so there's an opportunity, folks, if you want to hear about not just his story and mine, and several other veterans that have just gone through complete injustice. But what's great about this documentary is it really has a positive message. It's not just a negative documentary. You walk away from it, I think, feeling good and feeling hope for what can be done to turn our country around. One of the things that we're doing with this project, and it's really exciting, is 50% of the proceeds for people who go and watch this video, and it costs basically $10.99, to watch the video. But all the money that goes into this, 50% of the proceeds are going to go to help a veteran walk again by fitting him with an exoskeleton. And it's a pretty exciting thing. And so I just want to encourage you guys to go check it out. It also helps our show. We get, it's not a lot, but we get a little bit out of each person that goes and rents that video. If you go to finishthisfight.us/Cain, and you will also be helping to contribute to this show as well. So I just want to let you guys know a little bit more about that. So Gary, one of the things that has concerned me with, kind of like where I've seen our government go, I was one of the few people that had an inside look at some of the things that were going on to set up this massive censorship, industrial complex. Some of the things that I saw started actually before I went to FBI. I was working for Marforce Cyber, and which is the Marine Forces Cyberspace Command. And I was basically going after hackers hacking our national critical infrastructure. So I had access to and was read on to intelligence authorities and things like FISA, Section 702, those types of surveillance tools. But also I signed all kinds of non-disclosures for basically how the government interacts with companies like Alphabet Inc. and Facebook and Twitter. And it was shocking what I saw, because it was clearly unconstitutional. And it was the beginnings, and of course the justification was, we got to stop terrorists. So we need to be able to, to influence, and we need to be able to provide immunity, okay, for companies to lie in their privacy policies and things like that. And I've talked about these things because they're unconstitutional. And I don't think they would ever hold up in court of law. But they've been doing these things for quite some time. And while they were in the hands of, maybe, uh, Republicans and neocons that wanted to, fuel propaganda for, their forever wars, it didn't really impact the American citizen, in terms of censorship so much. But then when it went over into the hands of others, starting really with Obama, and he began changing some of the rules, I was read on to FISA, and there were all these changes that were made at the end of his administration that changed things from the way they were when I was there. Some of those things had to do with like how information gets unmasked, surveillance information, and how they could pass that information from one agency to another. None of that was allowed when I was there, but all of that began to change, as well as they began working with third-party companies because they realized they were in trouble with, the Constitution. So they began basically saying, okay, well, we're going to basically, instead of just directly spying on the Americans, we'll let these other companies do it. Instead of
They
directly
outsourced it.
Yeah, they outsourced it. Instead of, we know we're going to get hit and get in trouble for censoring. And they saw that, especially, as the Twitter files began to, to get exposed and all of that. So they were like, okay, we're going to basically fund and create a third-party group that's non-governmental, and they're going to then influence all of these, social media companies and teach them on how to, basically pre-bunk, pre-bunking. That's one of their terms that they use, right? They actually created a framework based on MITRE, which, had a cybersecurity framework. They built one for disinformation, misinformation, and really what they should just call it is propaganda and censorship, because that's all it is. And the way they counter what they call disinformation is by using tools and techniques called pre-bunking. I've seen this actually play out in government agencies like CISA, for example. CISA was in the lead up to the 2020 election. They were actively pushing joint public service announcements with the FBI hand in hand with CISA to basically put out all this information that, we're getting intelligence that the Russians are going to try to, affect our elections, and that they are going to try to sow distrust of our electronic voting machines. And, so they're basically setting things up so that nobody can challenge anything because it's Russian, propaganda. And this is what they were doing. But what was crazy was when all of this stuff started popping up about, and it started really, Schellenberger and some of these other guys that were basically digging into things. A lot of it coming out of it, stemming from the Twitter files. They began to understand this was a much more organized conglomerate of organizations, some government, some non-government, working together to control the narrative and to completely shut down any opposition to the narrative that they wanted to push. And of course, other things that helped to make that possible were things like the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, right? Which basically Obama signed into law, which allowed for the federal government to actively propagandize the American people. And a lot of people don't know about that and don't understand it, but there were changes made. What things did you discover as you were looking into some of these things?
I tell you, we that November 2017 moment was so clear to me, right? I saw it in the data, and we knew something was going on. Well, maybe it was about a few months later. This guy named Zach Voorhees decides he's working inside Google, and he's had enough of what he's seen.
Yeah.
He takes out 1,000 documents from Google. This was huge. what Zach Voorhees revealed in that whistleblowing moment proved everything that we had suspected, because we saw it in the data, but there was never an acknowledgement of it.
Right.
And so he releases all the documents, and I'm going through some of them, and I see this document, and I will never forget that day. I look at this document, and it says, here is how we can censor, or we can rank news in the search algorithm. And it had a list of like 10 news outlets, ranging from like, mainstream media at the top, and then they had like the lowest suppression number, a negative suppression number, so they would rise to above, and then it would go down to the very bottom. Well, my channel was on the list, and Russia Today was actually ranked above me.
Jeez.
And yeah, so you have a straight up state
Sponsored,
Russian news, state sponsored propaganda from Russia, ranked higher than a domestic, independent American news guy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy cow, there it is, black and white. We were at the bottom of the list. That was the moment I showed my representation in Los Angeles. I said, you got to see this, man. Look, and everyone, we were just blown away. We knew it was there. It was. So, it only really just got worse from there. Moving, like, we had the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I remember, first of all, there was fear. I had genuine fear. I'll admit it.
Sure.
I didn't know what was going on. I mean, despite the fact that 5 years prior, I produced a documentary called Enemy of the State, Camp FEMA Part 2, where we talked about SARS and bird flu and how they would lock down and mandate and vaccine and do all these things. I mean, I knew.
Well, they were telling us that back then.
Right.
They were,
I knew.
Yeah.
I knew the mechanisms of control. But as it's coming at you like a freight train, sometimes you don't recognize it's a freight train coming at you,
Yeah.
So initially it was like, okay, let's just proceed with caution and see what happens. Well, as I'm on Twitter one day, Twitter at the time, I see this doctor, and he looks kind of crazy. He looked really stressed out. I mean, we're in a pandemic. Why wouldn't the doctor be stressed out, right? And he's holding a video camera. He's recording himself against the wall. And what he's saying is like, this is revolutionary truth, and it needs to be heard right now. So I reached out to him. His name is Dr. Rashid Buttar. And I said, I want to interview you on my show, and we need to package this, because my methodology, as you see me now, like, I wear a black shirt, my hat, and my glasses, and I dumped the suit. I feel a lot more like me now, like a lot more comfortable, rather than, I mean, the suit presentation served its role for a very long time when we're competing against the visuals of the mainstream media. I was trying to match the visuals of the mainstream media with my message, with our message, right? Yeah. So it could be packaged and processed by the American people in the way that they were used to seeing it. Well, the game has changed. It's completely changed. And I was always trying to break out of that suit for a very long time.
I understand.
And eventually I was able. I think it was the Trump assassination, the first attempt, that really broke the mold for me there. But so I see this doctor. I see him on X, and I go, or Twitter. I go, I need you. We're going to do an interview. I want you to put on your lab coat, get your stethoscope, put a bookcase behind you, and let's talk about this. He goes on and starts talking about the pandemic. Fauci needs to go to prison. This thing's a fraud. They're going to do mandates, lockdowns. It's all coming. Buckle up. And that interview went totally viral, worldwide viral, because everyone was looking for answers at that time. When I met Patrick Bet-David at Mar-a-Lago a couple of weeks back, and it was such a wild moment, because here I am. I'm on the red carpet. I'm interviewing people. Patrick Bet-David walks up, and I wasn't wearing my glasses.
Hmm.
And I put my microphone in his face, and he goes, "Wait a minute. Don't you normally wear glasses?" I'm like, "Here's Patrick Bet-David saying this to me. What?" He's like, "Yeah, you normally wear glasses." He's like, "My father watches your show.
Mm.
My father's always telling me, you got to watch this guy. You got to watch this guy." and it's because what we were talking about during the pandemic. I mean, it's completely saturated the planet. It was the only, I believe, one of the first pieces of media that was able to break the narrative and push back on the dominoes that the globalists and the Faucis and the World Health Organization and CDC were trying to tell us. So 10 million views on that video. And we had a participate in something called Content ID on YouTube, where if every video gets its own thumbprint, and we were able to track if someone downloads a video and re-uploads it. Well, that video got re-uploaded 3,500 times back onto YouTube. And it was translated into multiple languages. I found it on platforms all over the world, in Filipino and Greek and Italian and Russian and German, like every language, right? YouTube deleted that video. They didn't give us a strike. They said, "Oh, this violates the World Health Organization. These are new terms." And suddenly, like, I'm still pushing ahead. Now I've got this newfound knowledge, and a true understanding of Fauci and his game, and I started interviewing other people who were associated with Fauci, reporting on those 2 emergency room doctors out in California, like all these things, and every video is getting taken down.
Yeah.
You know, and we must have had like 20 videos taken down, to the point where we had to go back through our catalog and remove anything that said vaccine. Like we for years we would talk about teaching people how to have a religious exemption, and I would talk to doctors about connections with autism and health freedom related things. We had to go back, and I knew it was coming, so we preemptively went and removed the content. And we were talking about different purges that have occurred over time. I have been able to kind of preempt a lot of those things because I could sense what was on its way. So we would preemptively remove content before policies would be enacted, and then we would survive these purges.
Yeah.
But the pandemic was one of the big moments of censorship that we saw.
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, one of the most egregious that I saw that happened to me. I was doing a lot of tweeting on Twitter about everything from government corruption and surveillance. I was talking a lot about that. Of course, talking about my own story, election integrity type stuff. But the one thing that got me kicked off Twitter, that got me suspended the first time, was all I did was I basically posted a published report in the Lancet Journal of I think they were from India. They were 2 Indian scientists, geneticists, that had taken a look at the COVID, because this is when they were pushing the narrative that it came from a wet market and that it, naturally evolved. And these guys had looked at it and said, "There's no way. This has too many inclusions like MERS and SARS and HIV that it could not possibly not, it would take 1 million years potentially for that to have evolved. It's just not possible." And they said it had to have been made in a lab. And so I didn't even make a comment. I just said, "This is interesting." And I posted it, and immediately my account got suspended. I couldn't believe it. And so I had to, in order to get my account back, I had to remove the video, or not video, the article. I had to just remove, completely delete it. So I deleted it, got back on. Then the next thing that happened, and so I didn't even have any warnings or anything. I was immediately just permanently banned. Was the last post that I made was after the election. Chris Krebs, who was the head of CISA, had gone on and made this public statement that this was the most secure election in American history. And I called him out as a bold-faced liar. and And I basically just, I criticized him. And next thing you know, my account's permanently banned. That's when I knew that the government was involved in the censorship. It wasn't just,
Well, and
a media
that's,
narrative.
we share the same story because we have our pandemic censorship and then we have the election censorship, and they butted up against each other because right after they stole the 2020 election, can I say that?
Yeah.
Oh, conspiracy. Oh, I'll never forget. I was just recently, I was an MC for one of the defendants in the Trump Georgia case, the pastor, patriot pastor, and it was a fundraiser for him at a local church because he's from Illinois, and that's where I'm in Illinois. So I'm the MC and I'm doing my spiel on the stage, and I go, "It was stolen. The election." I mean, I just went on and said it. We all know it was stolen. It was stolen.
Yeah.
Very matter of fact. Immediately following the event, this New York Times reporter comes running up to me with his microphone in his hand. "You just declared the election was stolen. What proof do you have? What proof?" Like come on,
Right.
man. Like,
what proof do you have
anyway,
that it's not?
But yeah, show me your proof that it wasn't stolen. Well, so the interesting thing was this: when right after the election, we all woke up the next morning and we're like, "What the hell just happened?" The spike in votes and everything.
Yeah.
And then you had for that whole transition period from November to January, everybody was investigating. Giuliani was on the case, and they were going all over the country. They were holding these hearings and counting ballots and investigating things. And I was covering it every second, every moment, and I was right on top of it. And then YouTube says they put out a policy saying you can question the results of the election until after January 20th. At that point, you cannot. So
wow.
I said, okay, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until I can't. And I'll never forget. We were down in Orlando, Florida. We were on vacation. It was January 6th, and I'm sitting at the Portofino Hotel at Universal Studios by the little pond there, waiting for my boat to take me into the the theme park. My buddy and his wife and their child were just with us, and like, "You got to come to DC. We're gonna go to this rally." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna be here, man. I'm gonna spend some time with the family. You guys go, go have fun."
Oh man.
And so we go into the rides, and I was in the Fast and Furious queue, waiting to go on the ride. Pop open X and boom, or Twitter, and I see they're storming the Capitol. I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, it's happening. The reason I bring it up is because that's when YouTube changed the rules again. They went from January 20th. They said anything up to January 6th. And we had content that was being published. And then I got a strike while I was in Florida because one of my fill-in hosts, Elijah Schaefer, played a clip of Newt Gingrich. Just played a clip of Newt Gingrich on Fox News saying something.
Yeah.
Boom, strike the channel, no uploads for a week and all that. So okay, so now you're dealing with the COVID. You can't talk about COVID. Can't talk about origins. Can't talk about, remedies. Can't talk about ivermectin or whatever.
Yeah.
You can't create vaccine hesitancy. Can't question those things. Then you can't talk about the election.
Yeah. What the hell can you talk about then?
Yeah.
It's like, you take it away. You're taking everything off the table that people want to know about.
Well, and what I found was so remarkable was then around the time that the 2024 election started is when they reversed their policy. Like, oh, now you can talk about it. Now you can say the election was stolen. Now you can do all these things. I'm like, what the hell? Is it like, are we past this like safe zone where, speech like this was going to harm Biden or something? Like, it's just crazy. It's crazy that we've had to deal with all these things all this time. But, I'm thankful that Elon has bought X, and, you have platforms like Rumble. But we haven't been without our problems. I mean, just before 2020, I had the Chicago Tribune come at me, full page Sunday paper, try to take me out. And then February of last year, we did a report on YouTube that triggered demonetization right before the election was getting kicked off. So for 23 months, we endured hemorrhaging, financial hemorrhaging.
Mhm.
I had to sell personal assets and all kinds of things just to keep my operation going and keep people paid. But the turning point really came was when it was Zach Voorhees again. Like I was late May of this year.
Mhm.
He calls me up the day before he's about to go testify in Texas. He says, "Hey Gary, I'm gonna do a Hail Mary for you." I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm gonna testify before the Senate tomorrow." He sends me a copy of his prepared statement, and in that statement, he brings up Next News Network. He brings up the ranking classifiers. And I'm like, "Holy cow!" And he testified under oath, invoked my channel, told the committee that if they want to get to the bottom of demonetization, they need to
Mhm.
subpoena Google and find out what they did to Next News Network. And that really made a big difference, huge difference, because
Now there's
we had
liability.
right. They now Texas has subpoena power going direct to Google.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do, I just hung on to that case. I contacted the committee chair and invited them on my show. I'm on YouTube. I'm going to interview the committee chair who just
Nice.
subpoenaed Google, right? I'm like,
Mhm.
"So tell me what documents did you request?" "Oh, okay." "Did they comply?" "Oh, yeah, some of them did, some of them didn't." "Who didn't?" "Okay, thanks. Now if they submitted those documents to you, doesn't that make it public record?" "Oh, yes, it does." "Oh, so all the internal documents Google just sent you about demonetizing my channel is now public record?" "Mhm." "Okay. Well, how about we go ahead and subpoena those records? How about I submit I'm like, "So how do I get access?" "Oh, public information request." "That's it?" "Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the interview, sir." I wait, and now this is
Oh,
public.
yeah.
I'm publishing this on YouTube, basically telegraphing to them as I'm talking to the committee chair, going,
Beautiful.
"Guess what, guys? I'm about to go after those records that you just handed him." And that's what I did. I
Yeah.
submitted the PIA, and so we're waiting on Attorney General Paxton to rule on what is considered trade secret or not, to find out exactly what happened behind the scenes. And we're going to reverse engineer all that information and get to the bottom of it. But that's where I'm at right now, waiting to find
That's
out.
awesome. Well, I've got to cut to another commercial break, but when we come back, I want to talk about what's going on now with the raw feed and some of the other things that you're working on.
Sure.
So
Mhm.
we'll be right back, folks, after a short message here.
America faces challenges like never before. Economic uncertainty, social unrest, debt implosion. The foundations of our freedom are under attack. To restore strength, prosperity, and the American way of life, Trump must win.
I plan to ensure that the United States will be the crypto capital of the planet and the Bitcoin superpower of the world.
Introducing the Trump token, blending the deflationary model of Bitcoin with the technological advancement of Solana. It's more than just a cryptocurrency. It's America's future medium of exchange. The Trump token pledges to donate 50% of proceeds, up to $50 million, to Trump's 2024 re-election campaign. Join the movement. Stand with Trump. Secure your future at thetrumptoken.com.
Welcome back to the Raising Cain show. I'm here with Gary Franchi. We've been talking about the censorship industrial control system and basically all that has gone on in social media, in mainstream media, everything, big tech. And it's been a very fascinating show. If you guys are joining late, you should definitely go back and watch what we've talked about. There's some interesting reveals that have come out of this conversation. But I want to talk about what you're doing now. You've got a new show, the raw feed that you're doing. What can you tell me about it? And how is it different than Next News Network and what you used to do?
Well, okay. So when we got demonetized, we had to figure out, I was able to keep my crew for as long as I possibly could and keep the operation going without any changes. And we maintained that flow for quite some time. But eventually we had to let go of our last person. You know, my friend Tom, who was working with us, helping me organize scripts and pull stories and, you know, time code out videos and, you know, organize everything. Eventually I had to let him go because we just couldn't afford it anymore. Like it was the last moment, the last breath. And just prior to the raw feed, we were doing a pseudo live show called Next News Prime Time. And so my wife would read these news briefs and I would read special reports, and it was packaged and pre-recorded and organized and presented as live. Prior to that, you know, it was good. We were able to, you know, to segment out our pieces, create our special reports, and do all these things at the same time. Similar batch recording process as we initially created years prior. But when it came to the raw feed, like, hey, I didn't have the same resources as I had previously. So when the assassination attempt happened in Butler, I popped open my laptop here and I opened up X and I just started going through everything that was being revealed in real time. And I was just wearing my black t-shirt, you know, and I remember seeing people's comments going, man, this must be serious if Franchi's not in his suit, right? Well, that was like the first sort of incarnation of that formula. And I also noticed that anytime I would go live, like from my backyard or from my phone, there was always this we'd get so many more views than we normally would. Because it was really truly unscripted. It was really just me talking with people and reacting and reporting.
And I think it's harder for the algorithm to censor live content. Like, especially if you put keywords in there and all that ahead of time, then they can censor it, right? But if it's just, you know, organic, how do they censor that? It's hard.
Right. It is difficult. I mean, they've got it down with the music copywriting stuff, but with respect to how the raw feed actually came about, you know, my traditional workflow is I browse 25 different websites, you know, and get a general feel for all of the different articles and narratives that are coming out of the conservative news community, you know, organizing all these narratives and then crafting scripts around it. So this one morning, I remember I was just laying in bed and I'm just scrolling X and I'm like bookmarking different posts. And I went to my producer. I said, you know, what if we just went live and I just presented these bookmark posts as individual topics? And what if we used a tool rather than my laptop? Because initially I think we started with the laptop. I said, well, what if we use a tool like this little box right here on my desk? And we plugged it into my phone so that I could actually scroll my phone like everyone scrolls. Everyone's on their phone, flip, right? Very common thing people see. So I said, well, let's do a thing where I'm scrolling my phone. You put my phone on the screen and I will play videos from that. I'll read the tweets from that. I'll react to that and I'll collect things throughout the day. Let's do that. And that's how the raw feed came into being. You know, let's just call it the raw feed because that's really what it is. It's my raw X feed. And you're seeing the things I've handpicked for you that, like, when I go ahead and I collect all these news stories and all these articles and all these reactions, I'm funneling them down into these narrative topics, and that becomes a segment for each piece. And then I just, you know, like one day I'm like, you know, hell, I'm not going to do my hair today. I'm not going to put my freaking hair gel in my hair today. I'm just tired of this, you know, I'm just going to put my hat on. And it's just been the way it is. And I feel a lot more comfortable and free to speak. You know, there's more than enough content on X to riff off of, and react to and play clips and interrupt, you know, people talking on a video or whatever and react to it. So I think it's a lot more, it's breaking out of that damn suit that I always wanted to do. so that I could be me rather than, the polished news guy, which again served its purpose. It definitely served its purpose for the time. But now people want what's real. They want real people. They want real reactions, real opinions, and organic raw journalism.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the raw feed really is. And I think that's why it's resonating so well. Every video we put out gets thousands and thousands of views. We segment out the segments from the raw feed and upload those independently. And then those go viral, hundreds, thousands of views, millions of views on these videos.
Yeah.
And it's because it's real. It's not me. Again, I don't want to knock Gary Franchi, newsman Gary, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different presentation style and a different format that I feel is more authentic.
Yeah.
And it's something I always wanted to. Like I said, I always want to break out of that suit. Now
have you noticed that, like, so for this show, for example, we stream, obviously to Rumble, but I also multicast to, I've got a couple X channels and a few others on the Patriots Prayer Network that, that I stream on, or I multicast to their channels as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that I get way more views from X, like, especially because I tend to talk about controversial topics that probably are their algorithms are hitting. I basically stopped. At first I had my Facebook channels that I was sending it to as well, but I'd only get 1-2 views. And then half the time it would cut out, like they would cut it. Same thing with
Facebook.
YouTube.
They won't even, Facebook won't even take my feeds anymore.
Yeah. So I just gave up on them, and I've focused really, like, most of it has been X. And like we've got 1,700, plus viewers right now live watching the show.
That's amazing.
And it has been amazing, but it's been because of X. And thank God that Elon Musk bought that platform, because if he hadn't, I don't know where we would be today. I think
for
that
me,
it's had a huge impact.
It's the exact opposite for me, because
Really?
I've built a massive audience on YouTube with 2.25 million subscribers over 10, 12 years. So when we go live, you got, hundreds of thousands of people receiving notifications. So the bulk of our viewership is on YouTube. And then on X, it's not so much. I'm not, like the last live we did just a couple hours ago, that had like 9,000, 10,000 views. But that's also because the subject matter is very, very hot right now with discussion about the drones.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody
I'd
had
love to talk.
contacted me.
That would be a great conversation to talk about too.
Yeah.
But
well,
yeah,
I mean,
it's crazy.
The subject matter for that, when I went live, I'm watching the cumulative views on all platforms, because we use a program called EV Mux to simulcast across platforms. And I saw 15,000 viewers like watching live across all platforms, which is remarkable.
Yeah.
Generally when we go live across all platforms, I'll see, 5,000-6,000 viewers across platform. But then when they're finally published, they go up in the hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah.
So it's very different for me, because of YouTube's where our bulk of our audience is.
Yeah.
So
you got a long history there. And that's the other thing too. I think that like I'm starting to see something happening right now where a lot of the people that left YouTube are beginning to come back. So I don't know what has changed, but I know that one of the things that YouTube always had that was really great was their monetization, platform. I don't know what the heck Rumble, why they haven't been able to pull it off. Doing that. Maybe it's because they don't censor, and because YouTube does, they're able to get more more sponsors and that sort of thing. But I'm hoping that this is a good sign that we are moving away from and out of the whole cancel culture and all of that.
Well, I think there's a couple things at play here. I think, for one, that Texas committee put them all on notice. And I think also Donald Trump's new FCC commissioner that he's bringing in has already, like, shake the stick at them and going, you guys better behave. Trump has already said he's not going to stand for it. so I think that they realize that with Trump back in power, they better play nice.
Yeah.
Plus, Google has just received an antitrust ruling. They've got to break Chrome off of Google. That's a big deal.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll
so
finally go after him with Section 230.
and that's the thing too, is this has always been a point of contention for me, is that why are they censoring people when they already have 230 protections? They don't
That's
have
right.
to. You know, they could let everyone say whatever they want, and they can tell Adam Schiff to go pound sand when Adam Schiff sends them demand letters. Why are you talking about vaccines and creating hesitancy? Well, the YouTube can go, well, we have 230 protections and people are free to say what they want, but they don't do that. But I think the first one big indicator that we saw was when the New York Times went after all these top YouTubers just recently. And YouTube said, like, New York Times made a big deal about what these people were saying. And YouTube said these guys are not doing anything wrong. So New York Times, part of the old guard, media industrial complex, was doing their damnedest to try to kneecap all these conservative YouTubers, and YouTube actually defended them, which was quite shocking to me. So that's another indicator that things are changing. And I think the next 4 years are going to be, looking up for a lot of people. YouTube's monetization platform is number one in the world.
Yeah.
I've been a direct beneficiary of that for many years, and of course I've had my back and forth with them. But with respect to how Rumble, we've been uploading to Rumble for, I don't know, since like 2017 or 2015 or something like that. I mean, the first upload we were doing manual uploads. Excuse me, my guy Tom, who I had to let go. He was like my last writer on staff. Prior to that, he was working on my social media, and he would take all my videos and he would upload them manually to Rumble. And when you're publishing 20 videos a day, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
And he would take the metadata, take the videos, and upload them manually. And we were very dedicated. He was very good at doing it. Did it all the time. And we couldn't. I mean, we got 40 or 50,000 followers there, but we can't. I can't get any traction at Rumble.
Yeah.
I jokingly post my Rumble earnings on X,
right?
And I tag Rumble and I go, "Hey guys, thanks for the $100 this month."
Right.
Right. Or when I see the CEO of Rumble bragging about Dan Bongino being the number one podcaster in the world or on Rumble, and I go, "Yeah," and I comment back to the CEO. I go, "Of course he's the number one podcaster on your platform. He owns 15% of the company."
That's right.
And you put him, you want to pump him to the front page. That's why he's number one. So don't bullshit me that he's number one. You guys have artificially inflated him, just like YouTube artificially inflates CNN.
Yep.
And I was actually in talks when we got demonetized. I was in talks with Rumble about, and this is where they had an opportunity to save a news channel, to uphold their free speech platform, and okay, put us on the front page.
Yeah.
We'll give you a 3 live show a week production, and pay us X amount of dollars. And they even said, we'll put you on the front page, we'll boost your views, all these things. And then they just, and the conversations during that were very, I mean, that person I was talking to at Rumble, the rudest person I ever spoke with. And the nose in the air attitude that I got from those people was the most disgusting thing I think I'd ever witnessed in my entire life, considering my long track record. And I'm like, you'd think I would get a little bit more respect from these people. And they literally just crapped all over us, never even returned our call until I had to text him and say, "Really, man, you're going to ghost me? What kind of executive are you? You're the worst kind." And then he's like, "We're not interested at this time. Thank you." Like, yeah, dude. So like, when they go around and they want to say that they're the free speech platform, well, I have a little bit different experience with them, and I will call them out, And I don't mean to, like, listen, people are having good experiences on Rumble. If you're having good experience, God bless you. Keep going. Have fun with it. But my experience is a little bit different.
Well, I think for me, the biggest issue that I've seen is trying to monetize the show, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's expensive to keep this stuff up.
It is.
And and you put there's a lot of money that goes into it, a lot of time that goes into it. And if you want to be worth your salt, you got to have some people helping you, and helping you with production and booking and all of that. And those people aren't going to do it for free forever. So
Mhm.
it is something that has concerned me. And and so I'm a little bit curious to see how things, to see what's going to happen. I think I'm hoping that things will continue to get better, that the
Mhm.
environment will open things up, again on YouTube. And I'd like to see Elon Musk work on monetizing, you know, X for more people. He's got, of course, some people that have major players, like Tucker Carlson and stuff like that, that have their shows going on there and everything. But it'd be nice to see something for the little guys to be able to get started in this.
Well, it took me a long time to get monetized on X. I think the threshold is unrealistic.
I do too.
The threshold on YouTube is actually, I think, pretty reasonable. I started a Spanish channel, taking all of our content and running it through an AI system that would change our voice into Spanish language.
That's cool.
Um,
AI
yeah, so
is
we had a Spanish channel.
awesome.
Yeah, and we got that channel monetized
Yeah.
rather quickly. So, but for X, we eventually got monetized on X, but it was really by a fluke.
Hmm.
There was a story going around about Touchdown Timmy and the students that he was doing stuff with, and blah blah blah. And so we were putting out tweets, and we were covering this whistleblower who apparently was talking, a victim, and that those tweets went viral. We broke the threshold and got monetized. Our first payout on X was like $350. Our second
Hmm.
payout, we've only received our second payout, and that was only $40.
Mm.
You know, um, so I mean, I see people posting their payout, their X payouts, and they're enormous, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what these people are posting,
Well, I
but
know that there's a lot of really sus stuff that goes on
yeah,
with some of these channels that are just massive. And like like X Spaces, it's and I don't want to name names, but I know that there are people who they pay organizations that basically go and boost, they work the algorithms and the AI in ways to get more followers, and it's not organic at all. And
well,
and that
when you have like one big account that there all these big accounts and they're all retweeting each other,
yeah,
it becomes like this cartel.
it does.
And if you're not in that cartel, you're just going to get thrown by the wayside, and no one's ever going to care. You're never going to be seen. But these guys are going to be they're going to be copying other people's tweets that they saw and just
Right.
posting it on their channel, and they're going to get retweeted, and then they get all the credit for it. It's kind of sad, but that's the way that system works currently.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah, it
they're
does.
trying to crack down on stuff like that, but I do
Yeah.
appreciate. I feel the freest I've ever felt on Twitter or X than I ever have. Back in
Hmm.
the day, I wouldn't post as much. We had automatic systems that were publishing our content, and we'd see, oh, you got to delete this, and you're violating this, and this
Yeah.
channel gets deleted. But now I feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
So I don't. I
It's
mean, it's not
definitely.
for me. It's not about the money or the monetization there. It's just being able to put the content out, and if someone sees it, they see it. Like right now, we have a post that's going viral. It's got like 1 million hits already, and I just published
Mhm.
it like about an hour or so ago.
What
About the
advice would
drones.
you what advice would you give to new independent journalists and content creators that are trying to navigate today's censorship minefield, monetization, all these different issues? If you were to give them one solid piece of advice, what would that be?
Come from the heart.
Hmm.
Be real. Um, Consistent. Um, Clockwork. let your viewers be able to set their watch by you.
Mhm.
And be honest. If you asked me a year ago and you wanted to get into independent news on YouTube, I'd say stay the hell away from it. Don't even try. I say don't even bother.
Yeah.
Because the censorship minefield is peppered everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't walk
Do a show
without
on cooking.
having
Yeah. Do a show
know?
on gardening. Like, you probably
Yeah.
would do great, in those. And there's some truth to that. Like, I've actually thought about, like, there's some hobbies that I have that I'm pretty good at and I really
Sure.
enjoy. And I thought, if I'm going to do anything on YouTube, I should do that, like
Well, it's
on
funny because
herbs and things like that.
as my channel was demonetized, I'm getting advice from, my representation. They're like, well, maybe
Mhm.
you should try launching some other channels, go into some other, genres. So I tried that, and but my heart wasn't in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I there's only so many posts I can do about, Ghostbusters,
Yeah.
before it becomes
Exactly.
kind of redundant. Um, talking about a movie, Indiana Jones new movie comes out, and
Right. Right.
this is my thought about it, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the generation I come from.
I don't
Ghostbusters, Back to
understand.
the
There's some
Future.
things that I don't get in the new generation, right? Like, people watching other people playing video games. I will never understand that. I want
My
to
kids,
play it.
that's all they
I
do.
don't want to be the
They all,
one that's watching somebody else. It's like, to me, it's kind of the same thing back in our generation, the fishing shows, right?
yeah,
You're not fishing, you're actually watching some other dude
yeah,
fish,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just like
yeah,
from your living room.
yeah. Well, like I said, my kids, they love watching people play video games and hearing them
Yeah.
scream when they're running around. Like, and like it's playing in the living room, and I'm in the kitchen, and I'm trying to have a conversation with my wife, and I hear, these lunatic YouTubers, these kids screaming, and I'm like, turn that down, like get these YouTubers out of my house.
Right,
And
right.
my kids know, like, Dad's a YouTuber.
Oh, the
My kids,
crazy thing.
my kids used to razz me when they were younger,
Yeah.
before I got my gold play button, because they'd see these YouTubers that they watch with their gold play buttons, and my
My
kid would be like,
the
my son would
conversation
go,
that happens in our house is my son, who he's a pretty avid gamer, and he will
uh-huh.
be on, he'll be on some game, and he does a lot of, like, beta testing too, and so,
Mhm.
but he'll be on a game and he'll be talking with a bunch of Russians. And I got a clearance, right? So my wife's like, she pulls him aside, like, don't you be telling him what your dad does. Don't be talking to
Yeah,
these. And it's like,
yeah,
he's like, Mom, I don't talk to anybody about that stuff. But it's funny. It just cracks me
yeah.
up.
Well, like I said, my son would say, "Where's your gold play button, Dad?" And then
Yeah.
when it eventually came in the mail, I actually recorded a video of him opening up my gold play button, and he was so excited, and he saw it, and I published it to my YouTube channel. And then Forbes does a freaking news piece on me saying YouTube doesn't just permit conspiracy theorists, it gives them awards. And they
Ah,
embedded the video of me and my
what the
son
hell?
opening up my gold play button. The sentimental moment with the
Right.
sentimental music in my home.
They got to shit on
And they,
everything. It's
yeah,
just, that's what it is,
you
man.
know, yeah. So, like, again, if I could give any advice to anybody, whatever genre it is, if it is gardening, like, for example, I was at a GOP meeting today. I was a keynote speaker, and we're having a luncheon, and I'm talking with around the table, and gentleman sitting across from me, running for mayor of his town. He's an alderman, and we're talking, and his wife's sitting next to him, and she says that he's got some cooking videos on YouTube. And I said, well, keep going. He's like, he really likes to make these cooking videos. I said, do it. You know, as long as it comes from the heart, it will be successful.
Yeah,
And, like, anything you do that's genuine, people will see it and they will respond to it. And if it's not, they're gonna turn away because they know it's
that's
just a
true.
cash grab for monetization, and they're gonna say this is
Yeah.
bullshit. You know.
Yep.
So whether it's news, whether it's gardening, whether it's gaming, do it with all your heart, all your soul, and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Because at the very beginning, for me, it's always been about getting a message out. And we're never monetized on YouTube. we were just putting out video content. This is before I had the Next News Network channel, and just doing it. We'd raise money, people would donate, we'd have fundraisers and money bombs and DVDs and stuff like that we'd sell. And then eventually the monetization came along, and it helped
That's
us
true.
to fund the operation to keep going. So, it starts with nothing. It starts with your heart.
Yeah. Well, getting back to the the topic of tonight of censorship, and of course
Sure.
monetization is a huge part of that because it's cancel culture and and what has happened. But getting back to that issue, what is your core message to those who are frustrated by the suppression of truth and free discourse?
Um, it's hard because I've had to navigate that minefield. I've had to remove content. That's a very painful thing to do. I've had to self-censor. It's very painful to do.
Hmm.
And but you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a candidate here in Illinois, and he was running for Senate, and he was always giving me a hard time because I didn't want to have him on my show. And for one, it wasn't because of him. It was because after the pandemic, I don't want to censor my guests. And
Right.
if you're going to talk about election fraud, that's something I can't talk about. And that was one of his main talking points. And I wasn't about to bring somebody on who was going to talk about that. Well, then he started criticizing me, saying I never would talk about it. Well, I did talk about it up until YouTube said I couldn't talk about it. And now I'm talking about it because I can talk about it on the platform. And if I had spoken about it then beyond the, strike line,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have a channel. I wouldn't have
That's
a
right.
voice. I would
Yeah.
have the ability to continue, and we wouldn't be where we are today. So
You got to work with the tools that you have available. And like I even found this out. I ran for Congress and in the primary here in West Virginia, and I was adamant. I don't want any money from PACs or super PACs and all that. And people told me, you're nuts for that. You're not. You can't do it without it in a national race. And I found out they were right. As much as I hate the idea of it, because I do think that money corrupts politics. It doesn't necessarily, corrupt a politician, but it absolutely corrupts the process. And because, especially now you can take money from anybody really around the world through dark pool, because you're not taking it from them. They're basically just going to spend that money advertising, against your opponents and for you. And everybody, it's a dirty little trick that anybody and everybody that has a consultant, they're going to tell them you need to get this set up because you cannot win without that.
Yeah.
And there may be a one or two individuals that can do it in the right circumstances by a miracle. But the reality is that when you got to reach 700,000 people in your district that are spread out, over a massive area like West Virginia, because it's very rural, you can't go knock on that many doors. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have means of being able to send a direct mailer to people, because most of the people here are internet illiterate. They don't get on social media and all of that. Most of the voters, there's a lot of young people that know how to use the internet, but the fact is they don't vote. 80% of the people who vote are over age 55. And so the only thing that they really know about is Facebook, and Facebook sucks when it comes to censoring, anything that you want to put out politically. I had so much of my stuff taken down after I paid for them to put it out there. And, they would hit me with, this is, and they made the process extremely difficult to even get, the ability to pay for ads. It was very convoluted, and I don't necessarily think it was all censorship. I just think that their meta platform sucks.
It really does.
So,
No, it does. I can't even figure it out.
Yeah. And so I think, there's just certain things that I agree with you. You have to choose your battles, and you gotta figure out how to be able to succeed, competitively, with all the other people that are trying to succeed. And if you're going to hamstring yourself and you're going to tie both your hands behind your back and both your legs behind your back, you're not going to get very far down that track.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You just got to pick your battles, do it with all your heart, and just try to survive.
yeah,
And it's very difficult. I mean, a lot of people I talk to are surprised that I've made it this far, and
yeah,
through all the different purges that have occurred. And I can only say it's by the grace of God. He put me here for a reason, and for such a time as this, to get us through.
yeah,
And I think that you know I'm just a messenger. I'm not perfect. I'm an imperfect vessel.
mhm,
The Lord sees that, but He still allows me to continue, and I thank
yeah,
God for that mercy, and for that guidance and that protection for all these years.
yeah.
Um,
Well, Gary, that's a great kind of place to end the show on, because one of the things I always do is I always end my show with prayer, and it's
oh,
because
amen.
I'm doing this for a purpose and for I have a mission in this, but I also recognize that we got to do our part. God uses people, people that aren't perfect, but He uses them nonetheless. But at the same time, there's so much that's out of our control, that
Mhm.
if we think that we're going to be able to bring change and really fix these problems in our country without His help, we're fooling ourselves. Our founders understood that. They called it providence, that secret hand of God that comes in and opens certain doors and closes others, and
Oh yeah.
and makes a
Oh
way.
yeah.
And I've seen that over and over and over again. So I want to just go ahead and just bow our heads and say a quick prayer here for the end of the show.
Sure.
Heavenly Father, Lord, I just thank You for what we are seeing happening in our country in a positive way, Lord, at combating um, this censorship, industrial censorship complex, Lord, and the government censorship and the cancel culture and all of the corruption, Lord, that we've seen within our government. God, we love our country. We want to see it be successful. We want to see our freedoms again in this country, Lord. Lord, we believe in the simple message of making America great again. But Lord, we recognize it takes You to help us be able to accomplish that. And Lord, I thank You for Gary and what he's doing. I pray, Lord, a blessing over his endeavors and his future success, Lord, with this new show that he's got going. I pray, Lord, that You would raise up other people as well, Lord, that would continue to fight the fight. And Lord, eventually, Lord, as we all get to the age where we decide to retire at some point, that we'd be able to pass that mantle on to others that can continue that fight. Lord, I pray that You would bless our country in this next 4 years. I pray that we would see many of the terrible things that have occurred, they would be reversed, and we would see freedom again. And we just pray a blessing over everybody watching the show right now, and that You would do great things in the next 4 years. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Well, where can tell us, for those that are watching right now, where can they find your show, and where can they follow you on social media?
Okay, you can follow me on YouTube, of course. Just look up Next News Network. You can just subscribe to us there. You can also follow on X, same name, Next News Network. You can even look me up on Facebook, Gary Franchi. Look up Gary Franchi on Facebook. I post some some more hot takes there, because I know certain members or certain people a little more closer to home are watching on that feed. So you can follow me there on Facebook, at my personal name. But mostly, I'm on X. I'm on Rumble too. You can look up Next News Network on Rumble, and follow up, check us out when we're live on the raw feed, and you'll see the hot takes that we're reacting to and all the different news stuff, and maybe we'll finally get to the bottom of this drone thing.
Yeah,
A lot of people are saying it's
we're living
related
in
to
times that
WMDs, but
yeah. Well, it's interesting. We're living in times that I never would have imagined, where everybody with a phone, basically has a camera, and they can
Yeah.
and the camera quality on some of these phones is incredible. And
Yeah.
so it's not always the grainy photo, that somebody would take, 50 years ago. It's now you're getting some high quality video. So it's fascinating. And the news is developing so quickly now because of basically any person with a phone now can be, a reporter. So it's pretty fascinating times that we're living in, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. No, the playing field has definitely been leveled, and the mainstream media, they're freaking out. I mean, look at we can talk about this all night, but I mean, MSNBC's ratings are collapsing, CNN's ratings collapsing.
It's a new world.
It's a new world. And, people like yourself, people like myself, we're in the game. We've been here already. We're ahead of CNN. We're ahead of MSNBC because we're on the ground. We're closer to the news than they are. And we're getting it done. And we're going to keep getting it done for the American people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, folks, don't forget to like and subscribe to my show. And you can check out all of the stuff that I'm doing, not just here on this platform with the Patriot Prayer Network, but also I'm doing talk radio with America Out Loud News. And I also have a Substack, mcpota.substack.com, where I publish, a lot of really great articles that get into depth on national security matters and things like that. So check all those things out. You can find them all at theraisingcainshow.com. And I would encourage you to check out Gary's show. And I think there's some great things that are coming out of there. I like your new look, by the way. I think it is, it's definitely very, very, it looks good on you. So
thank you.
I think you're doing.
Well, the thing is, again, this is me.
Yep.
If you saw me on the street,
you got out of the monkey suit finally.
This is what I wear on the street. I always wear like a black t-shirt and jeans and my hat, sunglasses, and my gold chains and my watch or whatever, and that's me.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I can finally be me.
Yeah, definitely.
Rather than, trying to fit into a suit.
All right. Well, hey, God bless you. And God bless everybody watching the show tonight. You guys are awesome. And I couldn't do the show without any of you. So God bless and have a good night.
Raise some Cain. You gotta raise some Cain. In the heartland where the faith runs strong, we've seen the shadows growing long. Watch those around us be deceived. Yeah, the fight is at our doors, no matter who we believe. Corruption, lawless day and night, we'll speak the truth into the light. We'll bring the battle, heed the call, watch the whole thing fall. We gotta raise some Cain, show the lies, break some chains and make things right. Feel the power, be the change, the time is now. We gotta raise some Cain.